give myself a little bit of an introduction. My name is Ryan. I'm originally from Guam. Anybody know where Guam is? No? You do? In the back? Okay. Guam is a very small island in the Pacific Ocean. It is an American territory. So my mother's from Guam, my father's from the Philippines. But I've been sort of having the great fortune to live in different places while working as a chef. I've been cooking for about 16 years, so I'm not as young as you might think. And what I want to do today is just spend about an hour. We're gonna prepare food while we're waiting or while we're doing the presentation. But I want to spend an hour sort of to just let all of the people in the room who are like young culinarians, like chefs who are very eager to get out there in the world, to sort of give them like sort of my experience, sort of share my experience with what I've been through. So hopefully we'll give you some insight into what there is to come, what is to be expected in this career. Before we start, there are some chefs in the back, right? Yeah. So okay. So the people that are working here in the kitchens, you guys been working in kitchens for a while? Yeah. Okay. So some people here with a little bit of experience. We're gonna be eating an egg dish in about an hour from now. I want to ask the gentleman right here, gentleman, sir, right there in the back. How? No, you, you exactly. I don't want to point you out. I don't want to sing you out, but because there's a lot of different ways that people cook eggs. A lot of ways, whether it's like a soft-boiled egg or like a hard-boiled egg. So I want to ask you, how do you make hard-boiled eggs?
12 minutes.
How many minutes?
12.
12. And the water's boiling, right?
Yeah.
Do you take the egg from the refrigerator, or do you leave it outside for a while? From the refrigerator. Okay. That's actually very good. Yeah, that's a very common way that people do cook eggs, like a hard-boiled egg. We're gonna be cooking an egg today for 1 hour. For 1 hour. But it's not gonna be boiling. It's gonna be at a lower temperature. And you know, I guess you can do this at home if you have this oven, but maybe if you don't have this oven, you can't do it, right? So, okay, in the process of this presentation, we're going to be cooking eggs. So let's get underway with the presentation. I want you to focus on the two top screens. There's not any cooking going on, so the bottom screens is not relevant. So just focus on the top. During the presentation, there's going to be pictures and words up there that are flashing, which have a lot to do with what I'm going to be saying. So generally, we're going to be talking about progress through the kitchen, you know. And if you look at the evolution of man as we come up through the years, you know, we started off as a primitive species, but now we are an advanced life form, and we're chefs, and we're taking care of ourselves. You know, we're preparing food correctly. On the other hand, like a lot of people who enter the field, they do go through this progress as well, from the cook helper or commis chef up to the executive sous chef. So you can see also the transition that a lot of chefs make there. It's mostly around with the weight. Yeah, I'm around executive sous chef, I think. That's sort of where I'm at, yeah, at the moment. Okay, so what is the purpose of what we're talking about today? So it's important that we understand the roles that we have to play, right? So, and when I say know your role, we're going to be discussing what is the role of a restaurant, like what is the meaning and what is the purpose of a restaurant. Also, what is the role of a chef? As a chef, like once you put on this jacket, whether it's black or it's white, you know, we have a responsibility to uphold. You know, we have a lot of great people who have done great things, have worn the same uniform before you. So we have a lot of expectations. And also, what can you expect after culinary school? You know, what is it like to get out there in the field? The role of a restaurant. Now, this is a little bit more tricky than many people think it is. The role of a restaurant, it's quite intricate. You know, if you look at it from a money standpoint, I don't think you should be in the business if you look at the role of a restaurant solely as a source just to make money. the most important thing that a restaurant needs to fulfill is it needs to meet expectations. Yeah. So whatever operation you're running, whether it's a fine dining restaurant or a casual dining restaurant, your job every day as a chef is to be part of that team to meet the expectation. So whenever you fall below the expectation, then your guests are not going to be satisfied. And when you even just go a bit over, doing something a bit extra, you don't have to go so far away, but just go a bit extra, then you are going to be creating an exceptional experience for the guests. So we need to focus as a restaurant, as a unit, to meet these expectations, but also it's understanding what they are, right? Now, I always bring up this example of McDonald's when it comes to meeting expectations. Because McDonald's is not a fine dining restaurant, right? But McDonald's is probably the most successful food franchise in the world, and it's not because there's fine dining or there's a fancy chef in the back, but it's because of consistency. It's because you have an expectation as a customer what this Big Mac is supposed to taste like, So if you go to a McDonald's in Bali, or if you go to a McDonald's in New York, it tastes exactly the same. And it's not, the focus is not fine dining, but the focus is establishing that expectation that your guests and your customers come to expect, and consistently meeting them. And as I mentioned before, when we talk about going the extra mile, the most important thing is just to exceed that expectation. And it doesn't take a lot. Can you pass some paper towels? Also, there are no superstars in the kitchen. There's no superstars when it comes to service. If you watch football and you have a very, very famous person who's playing the center, right, or whatever, he cannot function without the rest of the team, right? So the important thing to remember is that there is no singular greatness in a restaurant. What makes a restaurant great is a lot of simple things that are done perfectly. So we have to involve ourselves in the details as a chef, or if you are working with the service. Our job is to get in the details, to understand that these are important things. If you have a recipe and the recipe has like 10 things to do, if you want to cut corners and only do like 7 of them, then you're compromising on the quality, right? Because every single step, no matter how small it is very important to the outcome of the dish, right? Of the final one. So the details are so important when it comes to having a great restaurant. Once again, it's not a single effort. It's not because you have someone who is a superstar. It's the sum of the small details. Another thing that restaurants should focus on accomplishing is not just making food, or not just providing service. There has come a long way from restaurants. I mean, even with social media and all of the cookbooks that are coming out now, and the dining public is far more educated than they were 20 years ago. So, you know what? If you are working in a restaurant and you have a menu, right, and then somebody orders the dish, and then you cook the food, and then the food is served warm, the food is served quick, and the seasoning is good, and it tastes right. Guess what? That's not enough anymore. Just doing your job or executing the food as it should be is not enough, because everybody else is doing it. So how can you differentiate yourself from what you do as a chef or as a restaurant? How can you, in the whole sea of all the other restaurants that exist? Now, there are a lot of restaurants that focus on other things. It's not just the food that ends up in front of your plate. It's not just the fancy service that you get when you order wine. It's creating experiences, and creating experiences it's the total picture of the entire dining experience. What is the lighting like? What is the temperature of the room? Hopefully not so hot, You know, what is the smells in the room? You know, like what does the cutlery feel like in your hand? Does the steak knife feel like really heavy? Is it sharp? You know, is the plate nice? You know, all of these things that come into play that build up to a really good dining experience. And as well as using things like memories, cooking things that have to do with nostalgia. Have you guys ever been to a restaurant or you've eaten something and you're like, man, that reminds me of when I was a kid, man. You know, like it's a familiar. People like that familiar feeling when they eat food. You know, as a chef, if your goal can be like, how can I bring the memory of what I like or what a lot of people in the area like, and how can I bring that to the forefront of the restaurant? You know, maybe served in a more fancy way. I like to do this a lot. I think sometimes because I was born in America, in Guam, sometimes the things that I do maybe are more suited for like a Western crowd. But I've done desserts that are based on like milk and cookies, or like roasted marshmallows, these things that a lot of Westerners might remember when they were kids, right? Desserts that are based on like cereal, like breakfast cereal. So it's important that this thing it's an organic concept that works everywhere around the world with the same formula, but you need to change it, you know, depending on where you are. I have an interesting experience when I was working in Beijing. I was working in a steakhouse in a very tall building, and I was the chef de cuisine for the restaurant. And we had a fan trip or a media trip. So what we were doing is we had the communications department from the hotel. They were sitting with a few guests, and the guests wanted to learn about the restaurant. They wanted to learn about the hotel. So we were cooking a few things for the guests, and for the main course, I served them something from my Filipino heritage, which is a Philippine adobo. Anyway, it was made with a very nice piece of beef. It was nicely executed. Anyway, as I was speaking with our PR team after, there was one woman from Mexico, and she told me that when she ate the main course, she was crying. So I thought it was bad. It's like, I'm so sorry. I thought maybe the dish was too salty and maybe it's hard for you to eat. But she said, no. The reason why I was crying is because that dish, that taste, it reminded me exactly of my grandmother. You know, so it was such a powerful experience for her that and of course she's gonna remember this for the rest of her life. You know, so when you create a restaurant at a time, you get to think more outside of the plate, and think more like how can you create really memorable experiences, you know, for the guests. I realize since I'm cooking eggs, I need to pace myself so we finish this presentation in an hour. Now, what is the role of a chef? I feel like I need to tell you. I need to tell you because I thought it was different. You know, I thought it was different when I was getting into it. You know, there's a lot of things that can influence you about what you think is the role of a chef once you put on this jacket. But I would like to sort of give you my ideas and sort of share my thoughts on what I think is the role of a chef. You have to remember that when you are a chef, especially the more higher you go up, you have to be inspiring. You have to be a leader. You know, the more higher you go up, and the more people who are working underneath you. You need to be an inspiring leader. You know, that's not easy. That's not easy to do. And I think the first part of being a leader is accepting all the responsibility that comes with it. You know, because you have a lot of power as you become a chef. But it's not only being a leader. I believe it's also to be someone who is a nurturer, someone who has a genuine feeling in their bones that they want to do something nice for other people. If you get gratification for making somebody a nice birthday cake and they love the way it tastes and you have that gratifying feeling, that's a very powerful thing, you know. And it's something that should be within you. I mean, if you, as a chef, cook and you're angry all the time, you know, or you don't care if the guests like the food or not, you know, I don't care. They're gonna pay, right? You know, this affects what your food tastes like. It affects your team. So you need to understand that when you accept responsibility to be a chef, you need to identify yourself as being a nurturer. You know, you want to make really good food for other people. You want people to to be happy and to feel good after they've come to eat at your restaurant. So being a nurturer, if you're not already, I think you should maybe focus on becoming that. But it's also important that you can grow into that nurturing position as long as you keep it in mind. Cooking is not difficult. The act of cooking itself is not difficult. It's a very simple equation from how I see it. Cooking is basically the ingredients plus the execution. Now, it may seem very simple, like the formula is simple, but then when you go into the details, it gets a bit more complicated. Now, when we say ingredients, now what does that mean? Like as long as you have a tomato, or should you have a really good tomato, or what I mean? If you want to talk about execution, did we maybe you have a dinner service for the restaurant, like, oh, we just barely made it, or like were we like really so organized, so there's always different levels of how you look at it. But then the way I see it is, as a chef, you should not compromise on these two things when it comes to cooking, because the ingredients, let's start off with the ingredients first, it's so important to what we do as a chef. If you are not interested in using local ingredients, if you feel like you need to fly a codfish from across the world to put in your restaurant, then I think we're at that age now, at that time of our lives, where we need to think twice about that. Do we need to be serving caviar? Do we need to be embracing all of these foods that are not so friendly to the environment? I'm not saying that everyone becomes vegetarian or we all become fanatics, but then as a chef, you have a really, really big responsibility when it comes to how you organize your menu, how you sell the food. And I think it all starts with embracing really good ingredients, but also embracing what we can locally. The more that we embrace locally, then the more farmers are going to want to produce to meet that demand, right? If there's only one or two chefs on the island that I really want tomatoes only from Jimbaran or whatever, if there's only one or two chefs for that, the farmers are going to be like, there's no demand for it, But if every single one of the chefs were saying, we want local stuff, we don't have to fly tomatoes from Australia or whatever, So the more that we're able to collectively work together to demand better food, and to get the economy and the farming stimulated, then the wheels will turn, right? Execution, like I mentioned before, there is no superstars in the kitchen. It does not matter how well you cook. And as for me as a chef, I'm not saying I've been in operation looking over 60, 80, 100 staff. I cannot say that I was always the fastest between everybody or the cleanest or I knew everything. But the thing is that you need to understand that you have to make sure that the whole team is aware and they're on board as well, right? If you are passionate about something or you really like cooking or you really understand that this dish is important, then how, as a chef, the challenge is how can you implant that feeling into like another person, right? Do you use your power and authority, like just do it, or do you come at it another way? So being able to get people on board will help with the execution. It'll help you in the end to be able to produce good food and to cook well. Sooner or later, you guys are going to graduate from culinary school. Now, I have a funny story. I went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. We graduated there, and there was like the schooling there is a bit different. We do blocks. So every 3 weeks there's a graduating class. Every 3 weeks there's a new class coming in. So the graduating classes are very small, but there's a lot every year. Every 3 weeks there's a graduating class. So in my graduating class there was like 70 people. And from these 70 people, like of course now we're all together on Facebook, right? We're all Facebook friends. How many do you think are still cooking as chefs?
70.
Out of 70 people. Like a percentage, how many do you think? Do you think everyone? It costs a lot of money, right? Less than half. Less than half of them are not cooking anymore. you send them messages and you say like, oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm a wine salesman. Oh, I'm working for F&B. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to also understand why that is. I will speak to the young chefs here quite straight. This is not an easy job. It's not an easy job. If out of all the 70 chefs, everyone's going to be an executive chef. We graduated off from the CIA, Culinary Institute of America. I think all 70 chefs are going to become executive chef? No. Only a small percentage of them will. Because as you think about how it is to be a chef, you sign up for culinary school and maybe halfway through it's like, oh, maybe it's not my thing, right? But I have to finish it because my parents are paying for the thing or whatever, right? So a lot of people maybe went through the program or maybe they thought, being a chef is not for me, right? So that they go into other things, which is fine. But you have to understand that as a chef and as a person in culinary school, that this happens, and you need to make a decision on which side you want to be on. Do you want to be on that side that is going to be changing, or do you want to be on the side that is successful and is going to eventually be executive chef? Because going on the other side of that, even the chefs that still wanted to cook, that still wanted to be in the kitchen, they also all can be chefs because of whatever challenges or limitations that they face in their career. I'm not, maybe they give up or they get discouraged. But as you start going higher up the pyramid, you get a bit more lonely. There's not a lot of people around you anymore, right? Because again, it's not an easy job, and I'm not saying it to discourage. I want to say it to inspire you, because to put it in your heart and your mind now that you don't want to be a part of that team that didn't make it. You want to be in that winning side, right? So that's something that you need to prepare for. You need to understand that just because you graduate from the culinary school, that everything doesn't come to you on a silver platter. Everything is not just given to you. You have to go out there and you have to take it. It's a long road. When I graduated from culinary school, my first job, you know what my salary was? Can anybody guess? For 1 month? In US dollar. 0. My first job for half a year, 0. I didn't get paid. It was free labor. I was working in Tokyo. I took a job in Tokyo, and I was the owner of the restaurant. They just gave me a place to stay, and then they fed me food. It was really good food, actually. And then that's it. I just work in the restaurant 16 hours every day, just to get that experience, because I wanted to do it. I was happy to do it. So you need to understand that it's a very long road, and I won't get into the work in a hotel or work in a fine dining restaurant. If anybody of you wants to speak about that, you can catch me after. But that's a whole other topic. But it's a long road, and it's not as though you pass the bar exam, congratulations, you're a lawyer, or you get your PhD or doctorate, you're a brain surgeon. It's not like that for chefs. You get your certification as a chef, you're not an executive chef yet. It takes a lot of time, a lot of growth, a lot of development to be able to. Now, okay, let's just be honest. You can be executive chef in a small place, or you can be executive chef in some operations. They might have an opportunity for someone who's young, but if you want to be like a really competitive executive chef, like a real leader, someone who can understand financial statements, you can lead a team of like 30 people, or 40 people, or 100 people, to be able to operate at a very high level. You need to feel a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. You have to accept a lot of pressure throughout your life so you can deal with things, So you have to understand that after graduation from culinary school, it's a long road. But if you keep up with it, you will eventually get there. We have a responsibility as chefs. We need to educate ourselves. Does anybody know Marco Pierre White? Marco Pierre White? Who's Marco Pierre White?
He's an Englishman. He kept up his restaurant like 5 years in a row, 3 Michelin stars.
Yes, he was a badass early on. He's very famous. His sous chef was Gordon Ramsay. Yeah, and he's very famous for he's the chef that made Gordon Ramsay cry. So Marco Pure White is he's an awesome guy, right? And he's been cooking for a long time. He's very famous for saying that in his kitchens they all wear the blue apron like the commies in Europe. So you know the reason why they wear the blue apron, even him, he wears it himself, is because what he says is their philosophy in the kitchen is that as a chef you're always learning, you're always a commie, you're always hungry, you know, you're always looking to get better, you know. There's no master chef. You know? Sorry, you know there's you can always learn something from somebody. When I was working in New York, I worked in a small French restaurant. It was a cute place. It was just a house, and the guy was the chef there. He was the chef for there for 25 years when I was there, and he's from France. He's there for a long time, and he's the only one that works in the kitchen. He just works alone. If somebody from the CIA goes there for an internship, you know, then we help him out, right? We work together. So at that time he was 55 years old, and it's a different. I don't know if it's different, but like the way that the chefs operate in New York and America, they like to get burned, they like to get cut up, you know, they like to pull things out of the oven with the bare hand. Like everyone likes to be really macho, right? It's like that's how it was. So this guy, when I was working there, because I was 25, 26 at the time, so I was working with him, and this guy was bad. It was awesome, you know, it was really good. And at 55 years old, still running like a train, you know, like a young man. And what made me very interested about him was that they would have like new cooking books come out. Like there would be a famous chef like across the world, and he would come out with a new cooking book, and he would get it, and he'd be like a little kid, you know. He would hold this book, and he'd run to me and he'd show it to me like a boy that just discovered something, you know. So I think what's important is that we need to educate ourselves. Cookbooks, if they don't excite you, they should excite you, you know. You know, if the new modernist cuisine, everybody know the modernist cuisine volumes, the 6 volumes, yeah. If the next book coming out about bread is not exciting you, it's not come out yet. But this should excite you. You know, these are the things that you need to be sort of infatuated with as a chef. You know, so we need to read books. You know, we need to stay informed. We need to know what's going on. We need to know what the chef across the water is doing and how he's treating this thing, and maybe they discovered like a new technique to work with something that's so important for the stimulation. I didn't say you have to copy them, but what I mean is that we need to make sure that we can be inspired by things, and we can absorb or understand a technique, and then we can make it our own by doing something else. Another thing that we need to do as chefs to educate ourselves is eat a lot. Don't take this the wrong way. Not eat a lot irresponsibly, but what I mean is to educate yourself and like who are the best restaurants in Bali, you know? Have you eaten there, you know? A lot of, if you speak to a lot of chefs in Europe and America, because a lot of when you enter the field, you don't make a lot of money, right? But then a lot of them, they put like $200 aside because I want to eat in 11 Madison Park, or I want to eat at a restaurant Danielle's, you know? Why? Why do you think that we should do that? It's very apparent that, you know, maybe you're going to work here, or maybe you're going to work somewhere else. The people that are doing the business here, that are on the top of their game, they spend a lot of research on what they're doing, you know? They spend a lot of investment, a lot of money on how the place looks, what they put on the menu, how they train the team. And, you know, this person who's the chef there of whether it's like Coup d'etat or Mosaic or these places, you know, or Mama San, you know, like these chefs have a lot that they put in this menu. They didn't just write this overnight and just send it to print, you know. So when you eat as a chef, you need to look at these things, you know. You need to look at the menu. You need to look at the menu. You need to try to jump in the mind of this chef and think like, why is he using this dish, or this sounds interesting, you know. Like, you know, try to see how these people they're successful now, you know. But as a young person who's getting into this field, you need to also understand like why are they successful, you know. So it's important to eat as an education. Not only that, but also not only to understand like how people run their business or how chefs make their menu, but also to train your palate, you know. If you don't know what tastes good, then how are you going to make good food, you know? And then at the same time, like, how are you gonna know what tastes good? You know, you're gonna go to some restaurant that is not doing well, that is about to close down, or you want to go to some place that the doors are always full. You know. Also, you need to know who's out there. I think I covered this by talking about the other chefs, but it's important to know not only here in Bali, but who are the big game players. You know. Does anybody know who's the top restaurant in the world by San Pellegrino top 50 restaurants? Anybody know Justin Bieber? Yeah. Okay. We need to know who's out there. Who are the big players when it comes to what we do as chefs, right? Like I said, I'm not just talking about Bali, but I'm talking about like around the world, right? So does anybody recognize any of these signs up there? San Pellegrino top 50 is sort of the trendy thing right now. Also Michelin, Tatler's is popular in some Asian countries. Also the Mini Guide. So for me, this is my Justin Bieber, right? For me, this is my Taylor Swift. I don't even know who's popular now. Man. Lady Gaga? No, she's still Britney Spears now. So this is for me like what I get really excited about, you know. And what these are restaurant ratings. These are restaurant ratings, and they are basically someone who's saying going to give a restaurant a certain certification because they have good service, good food, a nice atmosphere. So these people on this list, especially like a Michelin guide, like if you're 3 stars, or if you're like in the top 10 and the top 50, it's very, very powerful. It's very powerful to the point where some chefs don't want it. Because if you have a restaurant and they say, oh, we're gonna give you 1 Michelin star, congratulations. Then next year they go, just take it away. You know, and then people look at like, oh, how come your restaurant used to have 1 star, now there's no stars, you know? So some people don't want that pressure, you know? It's like, you know, when I'm doing good with business on my own, if you give me a star, then I have to keep it, you know? Because if I lose it, then it's such a visible thing that my business is not doing good when maybe it's not, right? So, but anyway, these things should be your Britney Spears, you know? These things should be like who you look up to, your heroes, you know? There's a picture here with some of the most 10, 15, 20 influential chefs in the world right now, you know? You know, some of them doing groundbreaking things, some of them doing things for the environment. There's a chef from Brazil who did all of his ingredients from like the Amazon. And some of the ingredients that he wanted to use, he created the ability for the farmers to grow it, so then he created a new food product for everybody else to use, you know? So how amazing is that, you know? But on the other side, as a chef, you open his cookbook, you can't cook anything in this book, because you can't get anything in there, you know, because everything is very obscure, everything is from Brazil, or it's hard to get. But I mean, people doing really, really amazing things that mean a lot, you know? I mean, they're not running fast, or they're not kicking a ball inside of a net or whatever, so maybe we don't know them, or they're not so popular, but you know, they're pushing the envelope. I think I cooked for 1 person in that list. I think so. Okay, one thing we need to not forget. Don't forget like where you came from. Don't forget like how much attention your sous chef gave you because you were not performing well. You know, it takes a lot of effort to be a mentor. It takes a lot of effort to be a trainer. When you are moving out through different stages of your life as a chef, even if you are just coming in as a commis, maybe you have a training beneath you. If you are a chef de partie, then you're looking over commis, right? And so on and so forth. Training is so important. You know, educating others is so important. There's a thing that we all say is like there's no more secret recipes anymore. You know, we don't hold anything anymore. We share. You know, the things about the new age chef. If you want to compare like the chefs from now, you compare it to the chefs years ago. The chefs, they share everything now. You know, they're sharing all of the secrets and all of the things that they worked on so hard. Because there's a collective effort from everybody that thinks that, you know, if everyone else can get better, then the profession, you know, the chefs and the food as a whole will come to the next level, you know. So we all need to help each other to get to the next level. And when you are working in your hotel, when you're working in your restaurant, that's exactly your responsibility. You need to make sure that you need to train the people who you're with. And it gets more complicated as you move up, as you change position. But then the first thing you need to think, if somebody makes a mistake, people make mistakes all the time in the kitchen, you know, but if you are, like, for example, in the future you're a sous chef and somebody makes a mistake, you need to think twice first. Did I give them all the tools to succeed, you know? Does he have the right pan, you know? Maybe I didn't train him enough how to do this thing. Maybe there's not enough manning, you know? So you need to think about these things before you decide how you want to correct the action, right? So keeping that in mind, if you are a trainer and a very good educator for your team in the beginning, then you can all start from a good space. So, like I said, like helping each other out to get to the top of the mountain, right? Everybody needs a helping hand. Like I said, there's no superstars in the kitchen. Everybody has to work together. Like I mentioned before, there's no more secret recipe. There's a very old version. Actually, this still exists a lot in China, and this is exactly that. It's the secret recipe. It's the protection of my intellectual idea, right? So this is how it works, and this is actually how it works in France as well. Like you have all of the trainees helping you to do all of these things. You're doing the recipe, 1, 2, 3. The last 2 steps, you tell the guy to get out of the kitchen, and then you finish it, or you add the last thing, or you put the last thing. So the people you're working with, they don't know how to do the whole thing. They only know bits and pieces. They only know the small things that lead up to the mysterious end product, you know. But this thing, like I said before, it's dead. You know, we don't operate like this anymore. There's the free sharing of everything, because most chefs now think like I can tell you my secret recipe because I'm going to come up with something else that's great anyway, right? When it comes to being a chef, I may have mentioned this before. It's not that we give you the title like you're a chef. Congratulations. You need to accept like the responsibility to be a mentor. If you are looking up to someone, let's say like I have a boss. Let's say I have a boss and I'm looking up to him. If he doesn't know that he has to be my mentor, I'm just gonna like always be looking up to him to an emptiness, you know. It's a two-way street, you know. And being a mentor, being an educator, being a leader, it's not given to you. It is an act that you have to willfully do, you know. You have to accept it and also give back. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. On the right side is Marco White. He's the guy that destroyed Gordon Ramsay when he was. Do not be sidetracked. Okay, it's not what you think. The life of a chef has nothing to do with Chopped, Master Chef, Top Chef, or any of these things you see on TV. There's nothing to do with that at all. So these shows, a lot of the media, the things that you see on TV where the guy's cooking, he's making a seafood dish by the ocean and the waves are crashing. You will never ever experience that in your life as a chef. Never. Ever. And even when you do, it's not going to feel special, you know. So get this out of your mind now, because we're not going to be TV stars. We're not going to be in front of the camera. We're not going to be as a judge and Top Chef. So this has nothing to do with the life that you've chosen, you know. Just to be quite straight, quite frank with you, right? I can tell you how my day goes. I used to work in I'm not working right now, I'm unemployed. But I was working with Shangri-La. Anybody know Shangri-La? Shangri-La Hotel. I was working in Shangri-La Hotel in Singapore, and I have about 3 days off a month, and I come into work at 7 a.m. and I leave around 10 or 11 at night. But that's just what it is. And it's not like I'm saying like nobody held a gun to my head like you can't go home. It's just like for me what I felt like, you know, I need to devote and give this much to the operation. it's also quite a busy place. Experiences may vary here and there, but I never once felt, okay, I'm lying. I have had somebody come up to me and say, hey, you're Chef Ryan. You know, because I have been in CCTV in Beijing. I've been like nationally broadcasted on TV, you know. I have been in a magazine. I'm not talking about a small magazine. I've been in Food and Wine China. I've been in a few other ones, you know. And you know what? I felt nothing, you know. It's nothing like, I was like, oh, finally I made it, you know. I can you know, call up my agent and become a superstar. These things, sometimes you achieve these goals, like these goals, if you want to be like a star, you want to be recognized. And when you get the exposure, when you get the things that you think you're looking for, you end up opening a door to like an empty room. Because it's nothing, it doesn't fulfill all of those hours that you spend at work. It's not worth it still, you know. But you know what is worth it? When you go out to the restaurants and you speak to the guests, hey, how are you doing? Like, man, you know, that food was amazing, you know? Or that was like the best meal I ever had in my life, you know? That fills all of the space. It fills all of the empty space that was supposedly put there by the magazine, you know? But, you know, just cooking for one person or one table and say, man, you know what? No joke, chef, that was awesome, you know? And that's what we're here for, right? So that also helps me know that, you know, we're doing a good job, right? So don't be sidetracked by the media. There are some chefs who can act like that, you know. Some chefs like Margaret White, he's famous for like let's say there's a restaurant critic that comes to his restaurant, they just take away all of the serving work. You know? They don't tell the guy to leave. They just one of the waiter comes and takes away the napkin, takes away the knife and fork. Another guy takes away the centerpiece, and they just leave him there. You know. Yeah, just let him figure out that he's not wanted here, you know. So, you know, some chefs can do that, you know. Some of these famous chefs that develop this attitude, develop this reputation, but it's not a lot. It's probably less than 1%. Less than 1% of us can act like this, or can have that freedom to say like, oh, you come to my restaurant, that's the menu. If you don't like it, then get out, you know. Or like very, very famous, like in the restaurants, you know, a lot of chefs deal with this too. Like the waiter comes in and says, chef, yeah, the guest, you know, the main course, the chicken and the potato, yeah. They want to change the potato to spinach. You know, tell them to get out. You know, we can't operate like that. You know, there are very few restaurants in the world where someone will go to and say, you know what, I come to this restaurant because it's so famous, and whatever the chef making, I'll just take it. You know, these are restaurants that are. Like I mentioned before, like the 3-star Michelin restaurant, you know, these are restaurants where you just go and you submit yourself to the chef. Like, here, just feed me whatever you want, chef. Like the omakase in the Japanese restaurant, right? But not all of us can do that. You know, we have to. We're here for among other things to have a successful business. You know, to make a successful reputation. This is one of my favorite ones. Creative cooking. Let's talk a bit about creative cooking. When we're like 20, you guys getting sleepy? No? Not sleepy? You're gonna eat some eggs in about 25 minutes. That's exciting. Anybody know those teams up there that are up there? You get this guy in the back knows everything. Who is that?
He is Fernandinho.
Fernandinho, you know the other guy?
I can see very well.
The other guy is actually not the one plating, he's the one next to him with the long scraggly hair.
I can't see.
This is the restaurant from Chicago, Alinea. So these two are one of these two chefs are some of my greatest heroes, you know. Like if they came to the airport, I'd hold the sign up with their name on it, you know, like a little girl, right? But anyway, these two chefs are, you know, what we think about when we talk about creative cooking. You may have heard the word molecular gastronomy. It's a dirty word. I think it's out of fashion. If anybody wants to talk about molecular gastronomy, you can come to me after the show. But I don't think that anytime you want to talk about creative cooking, it doesn't have to be a foam or a jelly or whatever. This is also not creative cooking. Creative cooking, I think it goes hand in hand with a lot of things. And I get this question. Working I've been the chef of a restaurant in Thailand before, right? And the thing is that a lot of guests I would come to the table and say, hey, how was the meal? And then they'll speak to me in Thai, you know, so I was working in Thailand. Because I guess I look Thai, right? So they'll speak to me in Thai, or they'll say, no, we want to speak to the chef. Well, I am the chef, you know. So I always had this battle, you know, with people asking me like, what do you do? Like, what do you cook? And like if I was the chef who was here before, and I said, you know, I'm Italian, you know. Oh man, you must cook pasta, you know. This pasta must be really good, you know. So they're for the dining public, it's normal. There's a preconceived expectation. You know, they see if you see the baker from Germany, a big guy with big hands, and he makes everything by hand, you feel like, man, maybe the bread must be really good, right? So there's an expectation that's placed on the chef and where he's from. But then you ask for me, like, where's the chef from? He's from Guam. That's Guam. What is that? So it's been a lot of in my career, I had to like live up to, or not live up to, but create an expectation. I had to sort of create the bar, you know, to sort of create the standard, because a lot of people were not willing to give it. They don't give me any benefit of the doubt. It's like, okay, he's from Guam, he must be good. It's more like, he's from Guam, yeah, okay, let's see, you know. So it was a challenge. Like, people ask me like, what do you cook? And I don't know what to say. I'm from Guam, and I don't cook Guam food, right? And I developed this comparison that helps me to define what I think every chef should strive for when it comes to like what is your style. I think it also helps to put you in the right mind when it comes to when you think about creative cooking. And I want to compare the two things that you see up there is cooking and music. So I believe there's a very strong correlation between the two. Now let's take, anybody here play an instrument? This guy does everything in the back, man. You play piano? Yeah, okay, man. Okay. Okay. When you are playing piano, follow me now. When you're playing piano, you have to learn notes, right? You have to learn the fingerings and everything, how to play the chords and all these things, right? How to read the notes. It's all the basics, the basic foundation of playing the music. And when you get good enough, when you learn how to play the music, then you can flip the pin, and then maybe it's like a hip hop piano song. I don't know, but you know, as you're learning, as you get better, you use the notes to tell you like what to play, right? It's the same with the chef. You know, when you're a chef, you learn how to use a knife, you learn how to, you know, to saute thing in the pan, and then you follow this recipe, you know. You learn all the fundamentals, how to braise, what is courgouillon, all of these things. So then you follow this recipe, and then it's a French dish, you know. Or you change the recipe and you follow it, and then it's a Japanese dish, you know. So when, as chefs, as we're going through our profession, we're also in the same line with the musicians, right? Like, we're learning a foundation and we're letting the music tell us what kind of food that we're making. But when you get really good at piano, are you really good at piano? Improvise? Can you do improvisation? Okay, when you do improvisation, if nobody knows what that is, they don't really need the music notes anymore. They just play like it sounds good, right? Maybe you have somebody playing like bass guitar behind you. You know, there's some guy playing drums, and you guys are all working together, right? Like going like, what is he playing? What kind of sound is that? Or what chord is it in? Then you play some things. You improvise. You make it up on the spot. But let me know if I'm wrong. But when you are improvising as a musician, like how I always ask myself, like how do you know what to play? You know, like what notes to play? Like how does the melody get created in your head? And I think it has to do with, you know, of course you're learning, you're playing notes based on like the basics that you learned, right? And then maybe you're inserting some sounds from some music that you like at the moment, you know. Maybe you're using some of the influence of other musicians that you look up to, you know. Maybe you were in a remote jungle and you heard some crazy sound that you wanted to reproduce in the music, you know. So it's like your musical memory and your musical history that, you know, it dictates like what you think is cool, right? Like if you hang out with everyone that plays classical music, maybe your sound is like really, you stay very classical, right? At the same time, if you're always at bars at night drinking whiskey with the jazzy guys, and you know, maybe your sound is a bit jazzy, right? So it's when you improvise with music, it's your musical history, a reflection of your musical history. Now you look at the same, because we're comparing this with cooking, right? So when you look at this with cooking, I think it's exactly the same thing. You know, when you want to create your own food, you don't need the recipes anymore. You still use the foundations and the basics from what you learned. But then, when you make decisions about what kind of dishes you want to make, it's based on what you think is good. what you tasted before, right? Maybe you went traveling in Korea and you tasted some street food and like, wow, I want to reproduce that flavor in the dish, right? So maybe you're inspired by some of the chefs that we spoke about earlier, right? So maybe you want to do something that he does in this style, or you look up to this restaurant and maybe they influence about the kind of things that you put on the plate. So as a chef, when somebody asks you what's your style and what's the kind of cuisine you do, you just say, I do my own style. I do food, which is a reflection of my culinary history, you know. It's a representation of things that I've tasted, what I think is good, you know, different chefs that I've met, you know, different chefs that I look up to. So this I think is a good way to define what we mean when it comes to cooking style, and it works across the entire board. It doesn't stay with anybody. There's two missions I had today. One is to let you know that the job of a chef is not what you think it is, and the other thing to tell you is that tell you the truth about passion. What I think about passion, because it's always a very romantic story when someone says, "Oh man, I'm so passionate about cooking." Like, why did you become a chef? No, I'm passionate, man. You know, like I'm just so passionate about cooking or baking or whatever. But let me, man. You know, I don't want to walk in the mud. And after 6 months, guess what? They're dirty. You know, the passion that you had for those brand new shoes they're not so important anymore. I'm not saying you don't like the shoe. You know, maybe it's still your favorite shoe, but maybe you weren't so passionate about it when you first got it. When you get a new car, you know, like, wow, man, this thing is amazing. I'm gonna make sure that this thing never has a scratch on it. You know. But after a while, it's like, you know, okay, you know, life is life and things get scratched. So I think it's the same when it comes to cooking. Passion is very cute. It's a very cute word. But at the end of the day, when you are cooking for 200 guests and, you know, 2 of your guys call in sick and 1 of your stove is not working and, you know, tomorrow you have to come in at 5 a.m., you know, passion has nothing to do with that. Passion is not going to drive you, you know. So there's another thing which I think is much more important than passion, and that is, but I think that for me it makes a lot of sense because you will not always feel so passionate about a tomato. You know, the tomatoes come in the season and they're so good, and then after a while, you know, okay, yeah, we used it already for the dish, and I'm a bit tired of the tomato. You know, what's next? You know, but you need to have a desire to like use good ingredients. You know. So it's not going to be the tomato, it's going to be something else that's coming after that. We're almost done. That's it. Well, you know, I think it's important, you know. And when I was your age, you know, when I was in your position, I never had the chance to, you know, to hear this kind of perspective from somebody else. You know, a lot of chefs, when they give presentations, it's not about this. It's about food. You know. So like for me to have the opportunity to say, you know, when I was in your position, I wish like somebody told me this. You know, I wish somebody. I'm not saying I'm going to dictate, you know, where you should work or, you know, or life is going to be hard, but, you know, I mean, to give you like a true example of what I've been through as a chef so far, you know, to help you make your decisions or to make you feel like, you know, when you hit that wall or you hit that obstacle, it's like, you know, it's not anything that's out of the ordinary, it's normal, you know. When we talked today about the eggs, 12 minutes, it's a very interesting question, I think, because there's, like, with cooking, there's many roads that you can get to, like, one answer, you know. There's many ways to boil an egg. You can, you know, boil it for 12 minutes, but then, you know, the question asked is, like, is it from the refrigerator or is it outside? Because it depends on what's the temperature inside the egg, right? So there's a lot of details that go into it as well. What I wanted to do today was to make a really cute egg dish. It's basically baked. There's pork in it, unfortunately, so if you can't have pork, let me know, then we'll make it without the bacon. That's fine, we can make it without the bacon. But what we made today is slow cooked egg. Anybody have a slow cooked egg before? Anybody? So 12 minutes for a hard boiled egg. We've been going for 60 minutes Now, before we taste, we're gonna make the dish. It's really fast to make it. Now, before we taste it, the thing that I need to ask you as a chef is when you think about food, don't be stuck in a box. Don't be stuck in like a hard-boiled egg. It's 12 minutes at boiling. Boiling water is how many degrees? 100 degrees. Yeah, it's always 100 degrees. Maybe if you're in Mount Everest, maybe it's a bit different, but generally speaking, if you live in a normal part of the world, it's 100 degrees, right? So when you take this as a chef to understand like what it is that we're doing, we're boiling an egg. No, we're not. We're putting an egg in an environment where it's 100 degrees, and after 12 minutes, it's fully cooked, right? So what we've done today, like I've done this before, people say like, how can you cook an egg for 1 hour? It's gonna be overcooked, The thing is that we didn't use 100 degrees. We used 65 degrees. 65 degrees. So what is special about this temperature is that this is, again, it's the work of another chef that's done this already, These chefs that are also scientists already, If you cook the egg yolk, there's a protein inside, and it cooks at 63 degrees, 63 to 64 degrees. That's when the protein cooks in the egg yolk. So when we're able to control the cooking and cook it at a very gentle temperature, like it doesn't overcook, and actually the egg yolk is it's a very strange texture. Not strange, it's very special. It's very silky. It's like custard, and it's for me, I like it because it's an egg sounds boring, right? We've worked as chefs. You guys cook eggs. Everybody egg. An egg is not it's not an ingredient for like everybody. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Does anybody know the significance of what the original meaning of what these lines are for? The original hand is a round one, and there's 100. It's 100 pleats in it, 100 folds, and it represented at that time. This is talking about like old France, It meant that in order for you to wear that hat, you need to have mastered the 100 ways that they said that you can produce an egg. At that time, So it was the egg, although so humble, You can use an egg to make meringue. You can use the egg to make ice cream, custard, flan, so many things, And on one hand, it's so normal. It's so everywhere that you don't even think about it anymore. But on the other hand, the great chefs before us used it as a benchmark in their hat to let everybody know that if you were able to wear this, then you deserved it because you can cook. And you can cook all the eggs that we say are the good preparation. So. We're at that. Anybody have any questions? No questions. Are you sure? You know what? What we're gonna do? We're gonna do next because we have 3 minutes for these eggs here. We're gonna put some of the garnishes inside of these little bowls. We're gonna pull the eggs out and we're gonna crack them in. I invite you to stay back for another 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Is that okay? Stay back a bit to taste it. It's basically bacon, eggs, and toast, and maple syrup. So it's a funny play on breakfast. If you hadn't had breakfast today, so now at 5:30 you can have some breakfast. And if you don't want to mention your question outside, you can also approach me up here and ask me your question. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
How many cannot eat bacon?
How many?
Yeah.
No. The pork is a separate thing. I think we do. Yung ano yan?
Tambah. Satu. Oke. Yang tambah kok.